And I'm just wondering, like, where does the fuel for higher come from if we've gotten all these really good headlines right now? Obviously, in the short term, right? Like, I do think Bitcoin goes to new all-time highs in the back half of the year, but like at this point, like I feel like we've kind of exhausted a lot of the really good fuel for higher. And I mean, like, we did go higher. We went from 74 to 95 in the span of a week and a half, 2 weeks, which is, a really strong move.
Nothing said on the Hivemind is a recommendation to buy or sell securities or tokens. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only, and any views expressed by anyone on the show are solely our own opinions, not financial advice.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Hivemind podcast. Jose is away today, so I'm doing the intro. Of course, I am Ceteris, head of research at Delphi. We are with Duncan, Flood Capital, Altcoin Gem Hunter, Jan, Delphi Ventures, and Jason joining us from the research team. He leads markets. And he's been on the pod a few times. So, yeah, I think getting into it, we'll just kind of start how we always do, talking about overall market vibes. It's Wednesday, April 30th, 10:38 Eastern time. I think the market's kind of dumped this morning on that negative GDP print. And then Navarro going on TV. Now it looks like they've rebounded a bit. But the last couple of weeks have been pretty good for crypto markets in general, really. Bitcoin came back to like 95K. I don't know, how are people feeling about like where we are right now?
Trump tweeted this morning, "This is Biden's stock market."
Yeah.
And then there's that meme of like, Trump being like, "This is a good time to buy," and it's like the person smiling, and then it's like Biden's stock market, and then it's like, oh no, what does that mean? Is that foreshadowing something?
I don't think so. I think it's more just trying to shift blame for the pain. GDP print is definitely Biden's administration. Like the impacts of kind of tariffs wouldn't really have factored into this print that much.
Yeah, I feel like the market's rallied a lot. It's like almost back to like levels pre-Liberation Day, or like near then, but I don't feel like a ton of stuff has changed. I guess like that's the biggest, other than like, I guess like Trump's admin seems more willing to make deals. Other than that, like they seem more eager to make deals.
Alts haven't rebounded as much. It's definitely been a Bitcoin led.
Yeah, no. Bitcoin and like stocks aren't down that much from that level. I guess like the risk is, because I've been watching like the stuff like China's been putting out from like their state media channels, and if they like want to slow play things or are like not super gung-ho about making a deal instantly, I wonder if they will like try and do that to get leverage on the US to make a better deal. I feel like that's like the big bear case. If like China actually has some say, versus like everyone's just kind of assuming it's whatever Trump wants at this point. But I feel like he's pissed off the Chinese quite a bit. And their like state media propaganda videos are like, "We won't back down to a bully." It's like pretty explicit, like we're not going to get pushed around by the US. So
Yeah, I don't really know what's going to happen on that front. Do you think I don't know, Jason, how do you think this Bitcoin is up from Liberation Day?
Yeah,
It's outperformed actually, I think, everything, including gold from Liberation Day, or maybe from Inauguration Day. Maybe not from Liberation Day.
Liberation Day, it's like flat.
Yeah.
I guess like Liberation Day was Tuesday, right? August 2nd or April 2nd. Sorry, Jesus. So yeah, it's up from Liberation Day. Stocks are kind of almost back to where they were. Not quite. They're still down a little bit. Yeah, it's definitely been the best performing asset. The only thing like I'm like I'm like kind of like in like a weird spot right now after like all of this rally, right? Because you had Liberation Day on April 2nd, right, which kind of started off a whole lot of this. And then since then we've had like quite a few, decently good headlines going from, right? You had like a week or two where maybe like a week and a half where you had like just like a barrage of really good headlines. So you had like a kind of like a softening stance on like the whole China trade deal, right? Like it went from like pretty much like fuck China to we'll work a deal with them, like we'll find some common ground type of headlines. You had that period of time where Trump was coming out and saying he wants to fire Powell, even though he's been saying that for a while now. Though you kind of got a bunch more of those headlines, and then he kind of walked that back as well. You started to see like the early parts of like trade deal negotiations with several countries like India, Japan, things like that. Other countries have come out and said that they are very willing to renegotiate trade deals under this new type of tariff regime, Israel being one of them. There, other countries as well. You had Paul Atkins confirmed as the SEC chair, I think last week, or maybe the end of the week prior. And then you had things like Cantor Fitzgerald, SoftBank, that Tether partnership thing. You had a whole, and then you had like just like a shitload of really good type of headlines, which then kind of blew shorts out of the water for the most part. And then Bitcoin climbed up above 90 to 95, and pretty much like since we got these headlines, like I tweeted this like something with all of that stuff in it on April 22nd, and pretty much since then like we've just kind of been sideways, right? Because like the way I look at it is like how many more really good headlines can you get without an actual resolution of some of these things, right? Because like at the end of the day, nothing has actually been resolved with respect to these things. So that's like the part I'm most cautious about at this point, right? Like we've had a really, really nice run up in Bitcoin. Strong alts have done really, really well. Things like Sol have, performed pretty well off the bottom. Hype, Fartcoin is up like, I don't know, 3.5x or something off the bottom, right? Like you've just seen like a really good week or two in crypto names. And I'm just wondering, like, where does the fuel for hire come from if we've gotten all these really good headlines right now? Obviously, in the short term, right? Like, I do think Bitcoin goes to new all-time highs in the back half of the year, but like at this point, like I feel like we've kind of exhausted a lot of the really good fuel for higher. And I mean, like we did go higher. We went from 74 to 95 in the span of a week and a half, 2 weeks, which is a really strong move. So I'm just kind of like wondering at this point, like, what do you guys think? Like, that's what I'm most cautious about. Like, I wouldn't say I'm like super bearish. I think you could see some, I guess, like turbulence within TradFi markets, equity markets, things like that, which could weigh on crypto, obviously, given correlations and things like that. But yeah, I'm just like kind of like at this point in the short term, I'm just like a little bit, I'm not like too sure at this point, like where we go next. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we go to 100 or if we go back down to 90 or 88 or something as well. Like to me it seems like a coin flip at this point, given how much of like the good headlines we have exhausted in the last like week or two.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bull case is, so we've definitely seen a bit of a decoupling, right? It's been very pronounced, right? The fact that you just have less dollar flows into U.S. assets means when things get bullish, maybe they're not the most obvious horse, and so I think that was some element of front running. And Bitcoin typically front runs risk on, and so there's always this debate whether it's front running risk on or a true decoupling that's not necessarily based on the notion that risk on will come back. So initially when we saw the decoupling, the confusion was always, or the question was always, is this Saylor? We saw a couple of times where it really wasn't, right? He announced low 9-figure buys, which relative to his standard pace is pretty low, and I think relative to the size of the market isn't going to move BTC up a couple $1,000 like it did move on those moves. So granted, you did have some positive headlines. I think so. I'm somewhat bought into the decoupling idea, particularly with how well gold's performed, right? So you do have the setup there for a more kind of macro led bid into BTC rather than it being like a pure risk on situation. I think the other stuff, so you have, Cantor's play, right? That's not just a headline, that's actually a lot of dry powder coming in. So I think, yeah, right, they're putting together this $3 billion vehicle. I think it's $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin from Tether, and then SoftBank's putting in $900 million, Bitfinex is putting in 600, and then they're issuing shares at a valuation of 80K 5 of Bitcoin, right? And so you're starting at a pretty flat premium, and the idea is they're kind of going to run the same playbook with converts, and that's a lot of dry powder, right? And I think you're seeing some of these other treasury plays start to happen now, and sure, you can argue this is kind of bubble territory, but I think it does create a bubble, but further down the line, right, the buying has to take place first, and this is a pretty material amount, and so I imagine there's going to be a pretty consistent bid, hopefully, from there. So there hasn't really been any confirmation in terms of whether those guys started deploying yet. So it's hard to attribute any of the performance to them. Obviously, we hope they haven't, but
I thought that they had bought their Bitcoin at like 85K, or
well,
is
they
that
contributed to it. They contributed the cash and issued shares. Yeah, at 85 is like the premium, or the market cap to NAV. So there's that. I think Sol probably is in a pretty good situation, right, with all these treasury plays, and especially when you consider the notionals, right? Sol Strategies is doing like a $1 billion vehicle. Upexy is one that, disclosure, we're investors in that, but they're going to be doing a large vehicle, and so you're the amount, like, that's that quantum isn't that much less than what some of these guys are doing for Bitcoin, but like it'll move the Sol market quite a bit more, right? So I don't necessarily know if that's been priced in. I don't think it has, because those vehicles have just started, and so yes, you could say there's definitely going to be some front running, but that buying still has to take place, and those vehicles are in an interesting spot where they can start their flywheel in a more compelling way, in the sense that they can buy locked Sol, right? You can't really buy locked Bitcoin at a discount or locked ETH at a discount, but you can buy locked Sol at a discount because of the FTX auctions. And so, for simple math, if you have $100 and you buy Sol at a 50% discount, the market will price it at par, right? So now you have you bought $200 worth of, you spent $100 to buy Sol. It's now worth $200 on your book, even though it's locked. And then the premium to NAV is applied to that larger base. So I think the flywheel there can definitely get going and really drive a bit for Sol. And then the question becomes, is Sol the best way to play a Sol rally, or is it just kind of long tail memes?
Yeah. I do think, I don't know, on the topic of Sol, I still just feel like that is the cleanest non-Bitcoin play for the entire cycle. Obviously, stuff will outperform it, but it just feels like they're just right in the entire direction they've gone in. Yesterday, the EF has like officially pivoted to, I mean, I don't know how much of a pivot is, but there's like a lot of changes going on. They're finally going to scale the L1. They are obviously going to like scale blobs and stuff too. I think I'm just really interested, curious to see where like Ethereum goes from here, and then if they actually do scale the L1 somewhat meaningfully. Like some people were critiquing this and being like, "Oh, you're kind of like rugging the rollout roadmap." Now, roll-ups need to compete for the L1 for like developers and stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's all true.
Wait, so how much faster do you think the L1's going to be?
They want to scale it 100x over the course of 4 years, which can get them to like, I think 3K TPS or something. It's still not going to compete with the high throughput chains, but it'll definitely keep more liquidity there. It'll basically kill a bunch of the more longer tail rollups. There's still going to be stuff like Mega ETH that obviously will always be able to do way more throughput than Ethereum. Like the rollups will, even just like the optimistic rollups, will still be like more performant than Ethereum. But yeah, just overall keeping more liquidity on L1, like a refocus on the L1.
Is 4 to 5 years too long or is it where you end
Yeah,
up
it's pretty long too, right?
gradually atrophying liquidity and activity?
The thing is, it's like 4 years, and then the goal again is like that 3K TPS. In 4 years, like that doesn't seem like it'll be enough, anyways. I really just feel like Ethereum's in a weird spot and has been in a weird spot for a long time. And I just don't want to shit on everything they're doing, because I do think that a lot of people in the community like do believe like they're building a good thing. And I respect that. It's just like I really don't know like what the right move is for them. I think they should have done this a few years ago. I think it's better to course correct at some point and realize, because scaling the L1 is still helpful to the roll-up roadmap too, especially if you get like shorter block times. If you get like single,
Yeah,
like
can you
what?
explain that a bit more?
Yeah, so like one thing now is Ethereum has this like hybrid kind of like consensus mechanism with like it finalizes after like 2 epochs, which is what it's like 12 or it's pretty long. You'll notice this when you deposit assets to exchanges, right? If you deposit from Ethereum, it takes a while. If you deposit from Solana, it's quick. Like Sui's quick, right? Avalanche is quick, right? A Cosmos like instant. Anything with like single slot finality, because there's no going back. And so this is hard when you have this whole rollup ecosystem, when you're doing all these like cross interop rollup transactions, and you need to wait for like Ethereum mainnet to actually finalize to kind of like legitimize each rollup, right? And so the way it kind of works today is that you have solvers and like market makers just fronting liquidity and taking that small risk or whatever, right? But if you get single slot finality and shorter block times, then you can do it's much easier to do all this like cross chain, cross roll up interoperability stuff, because it's like fairly instant on mainnet, right? And so that's something that they're also, I saw Dankrad. Dankrad seems to be the one leading this from the Ethereum side. But I don't know. There's just been so many. It's like they had this thing EOF that they're working on for like Ethereum object format, which is totally going to change the EVM for a few years. And it was supposed to go live in the next hard fork, and they just took it out after like a few years of development. And it's the right move to take it out, right? But I think there's also kind of like an issue there on why does something get worked on for like 2-3 years, and then people don't realize that it's a bad idea until it's literally about to be implemented, right? So I don't know. Like I just don't know. It's still like it's not cheap, right? That's the thing that you always need to come back to. And like Wall Street institutional investors. I mean, I was listening to a podcast with the BlackRock lady the other day too. It's like they have a bucket for Bitcoin, right? They don't want another monetary crypto asset. Like they don't. They decide on one. That's how like social consensus kind of forms. And Bitcoin is a macro asset. And none of these other all these other chains have to like have another reason why people buy it, and why their native token is valuable. And you're seeing it with things that, it's like I like taking a shot on like Celestia here at like less than $3 billion, but they have a lot to prove, and that token's not gonna turn around until people start believing that there's a path to like significant revenue for TIA at some point, right? Because it's still, you have to like, there's so many things that have to go right for them right now to actually see that play out, right? And so the market is taking a more of, in the past, I think people would bid narratives very easily without thinking much, without thinking too critically. And I think now people are more in tune with like, you look at a lot of these recent launches too for L1s and stuff are launching like around last private rounds, right? They're not launching at like a year ago. Dimension and Saga both launched at like 5-7 bill FDV. Okay, they're both trading at like 200 mil FDV today. Okay, just over a year. You're not seeing these projects launch at these crazy FDVs anymore. I'm really interested to see what Monad, like in Disclosure Angel Investor Monad, but if they launched a year ago, I'm pretty sure they would have launched at like 20 bill FDV or something, like 10 to 20, right? Like, what do they launch at now? I think that'll be a big tell on how much the market has changed. And I think it is probably healthy for the market because it's healthier for retail, right? Um, it's a lot of people always try and optimize for having this very high TGE launch valuation because you're richer on paper, your native token, use it for like grants or whatever, you can spend more. But all of these like launches from the past few years just have the most horrific charts, and it's just like demoralizing and crushing. um, and so I think that these new projects launching at more reasonable valuations, I think is a good thing. And you can actually have, you need people in the public market to do well. And I actually think this is like the ideal market for liquid traders now. Because you can just avoid like pretty much 95% of shit out there. But I still think there's like pretty good upside in a lot of some of these liquid tokens. Yeah, I don't know how other people feel about all this. I kind of ranted there.
Yeah, well, I feel like that had to happen, right? Like, stuff was insane. Like, stuff made absolutely no sense a year ago. So at least now it's starting to make more sense. Like, launching at more reasonable valuations, but still a lot of these things like don't make money. And like, you can call it reasonable versus what it was a year ago, but is it like, would someone non-crypto buy this business? Probably not.
Yeah, it still might be like they still might be too high, right? But it's getting, the closer it is to zero, the closer it is
it's
to
definitely-
a fair valuation, right?
It's definitely improving. Yeah. Do you think with like a lot of the meme stuff dying off on Solana, it's gonna affect like how excited people are about it in terms of like a lot of the stats were from all this meme activity that's like fallen off quite a bit.
I think, yeah, but like if you look at Solana, if you look at just REV across all chains, it's come down a lot, and including on Solana, it's come down a lot. Like if you look at Solana in isolation, but if you look at all the chains, Solana is still doing 50% of total industry REV. It's just kind of like, well, as the speculation comes down, what is the chain that people were doing the most speculation on? It's Solana. It's not like it's moved to, a lot of people had this theory that when meme coin trading died, Solana would like self implode in like a reflexive loop. But it's kind of like, well, these people didn't go do something else somewhere else. They just like stopped trading in general, really. And you can say some activity probably went to Hyperliquid and stuff too, right? Some trading activity.
Mhm.
But I think for the most part, I think Solana DeFi, honestly, it is starting to like, you're starting to see more DeFi stuff, a bunch of yield trading stuff. I think more people are like market making on Solana. There was something from Natesh from DFlow the other day about how many market makers are like using Solana without incentives, right? Just market making on there because they can be profitable. And that is a very good sign when you just naturally, that's like a good place to be. And the reason why I still just believe high throughput chains are where you're going has to do with like market making in general too, right? Like you need to carry your inventory somewhere. And this has always been the hard thing with the app chain thesis to me is like you cannot just carry inventory on a million different like app chains and stuff. It's so much easier to just carry it on like Ethereum L1 or on Solana, or maybe you're going to carry some on base, right? And yeah, I still think, I don't know. I still think that Solana is like the winner architecture right now.
If you look at like the universe of investors, they're all, they're buying for a variety of reasons. I think the portion of them that are buying Solana for the fundamental, like the pure, multiple fundamental value is pretty small. It's certainly there. So, as the meme coin situation fades, you might lose some of that bid. But I think you probably gain more. There's still, the people that want to allocate it to the space and want to be part of it. And so I think what you lose on that front is more than offset by the just general consensus around Solana kind of eating ETH's lunch on a longer time horizon. I think that just kind of happens more and more. And I think the amount of kind of money that would shift over from one to the other is more than the bid that comes in to take advantage of potentially increased staking yields when activity is higher. And then you have the treasury, the equity treasury plays also creating a bid. And so I think the narrative around it becomes quite a bit stronger. And what helps during washouts is that you have a kind of a reconcentration around quality. And so it becomes a bit of an easier market to invest in because you're not, things aren't pumping randomly that in a way that you can reason and position in, right? You can kind of relate and rely more on kind of a bit more rational investing, which makes the investing side easier and hopefully brings in capital.
Yeah, I think you can definitely feel more confident about like allocating to Solana long term. At the same time though, it's like Solana now is again getting up to a pretty big valuation where it's like hard to move. And
what's the FTV right now?
it's under 100, but it's like bumping up on 100. And I think, Ethereum, I really believe Ethereum was a victim of its own success in a way, because it got to such an insane valuation last bull market, which was driven by what? It was mostly driven by NFTs, right? If you really think about it, NFTs were like DeFi summer kicked stuff off, yes, and all that, got people excited, new primitives, all this stuff, very good, innovative, blah, blah, blah. But then ETH like really started pumping because of the whole NFT narrative. And then NFTs, if you remember, when people were minting these things, they're paying like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5K in gas fees, like just to mint stuff, right? And so this then went with the loop of like it being very deflationary. And then, you have Bored Apes going from like whatever it was to over 100 ETH, like floor price $500,000, right? Just like stupid, insane speculative activity. And this just made ETH get so highly valued. And when they got to that point, it was like, it was hard to justify beyond it being like this money asset, right? And so that's why they went more and more into this, like, we're money and all this stuff, because how do you really get it when you get to that high of a valuation? Like, how do you actually have this keep moving this thing higher and higher, right? And I think that maybe influenced the roadmap and stuff too, in a negative direction. And over the last few years, the market has kind of just been coming to the reality of that. And, now Solana is getting to, and Solana didn't go up because of NFTs or anything. It did go up because people, the meme coins, and people saw the increasing like fundamentals. But again, it's I know that there's a lot of people out there that believe in these like multi-trillion-dollar platforms, and Duncan just dropped off again for the second time. But dude, you gotta maybe return that computer, get your old one back.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Are these smart contract L1 tokens going to be like a couple $1 trillion? Can they actually get there? It's just a
You
lot
need
to
a,
ask for.
yeah, you need a lot more activity to move on chain. Yeah, it's tricky.
And they need to scale. Like you literally, if you do the math, it's like Solana actually has to hit these million TPS type metrics.
Right.
And if you add in, you know, if you do think, Jesus, Duncan, if you do think that like, you know, stuff like app specific sequencing and apps are going to start to capture more of their MEV, then that's also takes away a bit from the L1 economics. So
Yeah, and like the reflexivity on the with ETH NFTs was much larger than I think Sol memes, because it's like one way flow. It just ETH one way flow here. You know, you had trading in and out. You have people cashing out. There's much more GD, and then you also had pump fund dumping a whole lot of Sol every so often on all the fees.
Yeah, which makes me feel better about the Solana bid overall, as like a long-term structural bid. It will be interesting to see when Solana gets an actual ETF, because obviously the Ethereum ETF was quite disappointing.
Yeah, I feel like these treasury companies are better than an ETF.
Well, they're better than an ETF if they trade like close to NAV. I don't know if they're better if they trade.
They're better for Solana price.
For Solana price,
they're better for Solana price.
Yeah,
I think they're
gonna flip to a discount eventually. Like, there's so many of them. There's gonna be so many of them.
Like, yeah, I mean,
there's the Sol Strategies one. There's the Janover one. There's the the UPX.
Apexi. Right,
Apexi. There's gonna be more. Like, if everyone's gonna start, this just gives me like GBTC flashbacks super hard. Like,
different mechanism, but yeah, I mean,
yeah, but it's like same reflexivity, I think.
Well, so the thing is, the reflexivity gets worse as more join, because it's the late joiners that. So basically, when they go at a discount, what do? You sell Sol and buy shares, right? And so it's
But
the
do you think
late.
they'll do that?
Well, the late joiner. So if you only had early joiners, then it's less of a thing, because they get in at a lower price, and things can run up, and it gets less kind of insane. But it's the late joiners who, you know, get in towards the end of the cycle, and then they're going to have to be the first sellers, and that exacerbates the move on the way down. And then I think that's where you can have like a big negative move.
Yeah, but do you think they'll even sell? Like, do you think like
I think so.
will ever sell Bitcoin to buy
MicroStrategy? No, but I think the Sol ones will be more nimble and strategic, because they won't spook the market as much individually. We'll see what happens if they all follow the strategy, though.
But what if they're buying lock Sol then?
Yeah, but you'd also have plenty of unlocked Sol. Like, there's only so much locked Sol. It's more of an initial bootstrapping mechanism than it is like a viable long-term strategy, because there's only so much of it, and
it's probably gonna be pretty crazy for a little bit, and then like go the other way is my guess.
Yeah, so I think like the benefit of these structures is that one of the hard things about getting, for instance, an Ethereum staking ETF is that you always need liquid ETH for redemptions, right? With an ETF, and Ethereum has a pretty complicated like unstaking queue process. And so even if you got an Ethereum staking ETF, you would only be able to stake like, I don't even know, probably not even half of it. It depends like what you're, and so then your staking yield on the ETF is cut in half right there, right? Because you're only staking half the funds. The benefit of these things is that you can just stake the entire amount. And then also you don't have to stake through an institutional custodian investor that like takes a fee, you can also just stake it yourself, right? So that's kind of the benefit of it, is that you can get the full yield and like with no commissions. But again, that kind of that benefit goes away if they trade at crazy premiums, unless you just think it's going to stay at a premium. But you know, if that compresses,
But it's like, how many of these do you, like, need to exist in order for there not to be a premium, right? It's like,
Well, it's less so about the number of them. It's more so just kind of broader. If like the broader market's rallying, then these will keep doing well. It's like when there's a downturn.
yeah, how many? Yeah,
the thing is, you can buy even as like an American or like you can actually buy a spot Solana ETF right now in US dollars. It's just listed on the TSX. But like if you actually wanted spot USD Solana exposure, you could. But people are going to buy these things instead, still, right? Because it's like has this speculative kind of like game in it. And it's, you know, it's like people buy the triple levered Qs instead of the Qs, right?
It's also just the debt market's getting access to this stuff, and that's what gets the flywheel going through the converts.
I saw an interesting tweet from Will Clement about, he just said like, now with, you know, MicroStrategy of like the levered ETFs, you have like options on IBIT, you have, you know, Coinbase Hood, like all these different ways to get kind of like leverage or beta to crypto. He's like, I think, and now all these like new Solana vehicles. He's like, I think this is going to take away the demand for like some of like the stupider alts. It's like, why wouldn't you just like, you know, buy options on MicroStrategy or buy like the 2x long short
International market.
Yeah, so that's, I get, yeah, take away US demand, but maybe not global.
I was gonna say, like, is
For
the
sure.
buyer of these things the same as the buyer for Fartcoin or what? No, like they're just
No.
different buyers.
Yeah, it's just like an interesting, like, as there's like more ways to speculate and get leverage through like the historically better performing assets. Do you think that's going to take? Because like I guess like the big argument with people like don't want to buy Bitcoin is like, oh, it's only, like, can only like double or something. But I guess
I
it's
think
just different.
like the I think the meme coin community is mostly probably 20s and some early 30s, right? And they don't think they're going to make it on a 2x on BTC. Gamble to make it is
Yeah,
much
but
more
if
attractive.
there's like options, like Robinhood, like lists like perps or something, like Robinhood starts doing perps. Anyways, it's just interesting.
I think on Robinhood, I think Robinhood is gonna become the big winner out of all the centralized crypto
Yeah, it sounds like
exchanges.
people hate Coinbase. Like all I see on Twitter is people fucking dunking on Coinbase.
Yeah, I think Kraken's been doing good moves too. But Robinhood obviously already has like the way bigger distribution and everything.
And they bought that what was it, BitThumb or something? They bought some exchange a while ago, like in 2024. I forget.
Yeah. So what do you think is going to be the best way to so if you know we get these things launching on Sol and Sol makes a move over 200, right, from just the buying and the anticipation of the buying and those the premiums being there, and they're then able to raise more, like what is it levered Sol, is it Fartcoin or Popcoin or Popcat? I mean, it feels like it's the latter of the two. Like, yes, you had so basically the risk is you know Sol runs and they don't. The only time we really had that was on Trump coin, and that was just purely because people were piling cash into the Sol ecosystem to buy Trump, right? So I think that was a pretty isolated event where, and broadly when you had Sol do well, Sol meme beta did very well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what would change, right? Like it's always been that way, right? So like if you expect Soul, like it doesn't matter, like at any
I just
like
think you
what
really have to nail the
reason it
timing
is.
on it. You just have to nail the timing on it, because like look at all these other ones, like all the memes have gone super crushed. Like maybe they'll have like a really strong
That's good,
now.
right? Like that's the setup you want.
Yeah, I mean, like if you expect Sol to go to like 200 or 3, like it's the exact same kind of like rationale or thesis or whatever that you would have had like at the end of like 2023 into 2024. It's like if you expect crypto to go up and you think Sol is going to be one of the ecos that has the most attention and most stuff going on, like, and you want to make as much money as possible and you don't really care too much about the risk or the volatility associated, right? Like you just move further down the risk curve, and like it's always going to be the thing in crypto, at least now, right? Like maybe in a couple years that changes, but like, yeah, like, I mean, I think Sol's very good. Like, I mean, I have a big, percentage of the PA in Sol, and it will stay in Sol. But like, I think, yeah, I think, I don't know which memes or agents or AI things will do the best, but like, I know the winner or the couple big winners will probably come from those buckets of names.
But we're gonna remember to sell this time.
Yeah, we're gonna pull
Jason?
back at the Pico top this time.
The dogs are gonna get sold, right?
We sold some of the dogs at the top, and then mostly on the way down.
Yeah,
That's
I
why I
don't
feel
know.
like it's easier holding Soul. Like,
There's a lot of like Solana restaking stuff that I feel like is a nice little way to kind of juice like your Sol return if you don't want to buy memes and stuff.
what are like the API?
Just
You know how you
like-
juice your Sol return? 2x long Sol
yeah,
perps.
and also just 2x. Well, no, there's like, for instance, there's like fixed, you can buy like the fixed PT tokens, like whatever, 18-19%. It's like pretty good. And then you can also farm like the protocols involved with all this. None of the restaking protocols on Solana have their own tokens yet. None of the yield trading things have tokens. There's like a lot of new protocols that have kind of popped up around Solana restaking. And so, yeah, to me, that feels like a lower risk. Obviously, I mean, actually, I don't know if it's lower risk because you're taking a lot of smart contract risk doing all that versus just like holding a meme coin, right? But that kind of seems what it is. It's like restaking and then what memes. Those are like the most interesting areas.
I mean, right, of like if you go on Delphi's website to like the sector performance dashboard and you just like look at it over the last like 60 days, like the three buckets that have done the best is agents, platforms, and memes.
I know it's like I feel like you need to adjust.
And
that.
over the last 30 days, it's agents, platforms, and memes.
Yeah, the agent platform
the
frameworks are getting a bit of a bit.
Those have gotten so crushed, or since this Jan 1, like that's just like
sure at the Pico top. You can't. I don't think.
Well, you have
measuring
to anchor to the bottom,
like,
right? Like to the bottom, like what has performed best out of the bottom.
well, yeah, if you're buying everything in the, I feel like there has to be some sort of like risk weighted performance or something for those.
That's Tortino ratio.
Well, we're talking about what's going to outperform if Sol does well.
Yeah, right. Like if the base case is Sol goes to 250 or 300 or whatever it is, right? Like obviously, I think everybody should own Sol if that's what you think happens. Like that's a very obvious given. But like if you were to take some percentage of that Sol,
what about like Radium? Radium's gotten crushed.
Radium
lost part of their honeypot.
Their market is like completely different. Yeah.
Or Jupiter. What's Jupiter at? Or Jito?
I mean, hey man, even Zero Bro pumped like 3x on the bottom, and then it looked like its tweets were trained on Kanye or something. And or the dev was just tweeting. I have no idea.
Yeah, dev was definitely.
Well, wasn't that like some short squeeze or something? I saw
there was definitely shorts getting squeezed.
Yeah, the OI was bigger than market cap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways,
I mean, the other one is hype, right? I mean,
I mean, Tao has actually been getting a bit too.
Yeah, Sui Tao and hype have been. Yeah. The Tao stuff is. I mean, I know they have a halving over the summer, but like the emissions are just still hard for me to get comfortable behind. Maybe that's somebody else's opportunity, but
Like Hyperliquid's doing like 500 mil a year in buybacks, and then these other two are doing fucking inflating.
I was seeing people were talking about them like all altering the fees on maker orders. Is that's in effect now?
Well, they basically just did a blanket 30% raise across everything, but then if you stake Hype, you get a discount. So like you can actually make it cheaper than it was before if you stake enough Hype. But like it was already super, super competitive on fees. So I think it's probably boosted revenue by like 10-20%.
I mean, that's still meaningful, right? Like that's
for sure. Yeah, it moves the needle. Because I don't think people care that much and are optimizing for it. Basically, your bigger competition is people are farming some of these other like dexes, right? Because that actually does move the needle. And yeah.
But then like I think you could have some big whales like actually go and buy. I think the top tier is like 500,000 Hype. So that's like 10 million or something if you're like a market maker. And you could like, maybe hedge that out, but that gives you like I think it's a 40% reduction in fees. So that could definitely.
And they also there's like a new season of points, yeah. So kind of indicating that there's going to be. I mean, there's
like a testnet page.
Yes,
there's more hype.
We've been running it while we tried to short Bitcoin, Jason.
I was gonna say, aren't the rewards, or at least like the hype set aside for like community rewards and incentives? Isn't it like there's still more than was initially given out at TGE? Yeah. So like I would imagine people are probably going to continue like farming or using Hyperliquid, even with all of these other, potential, DEX airdrop things like Ostium Lighter. There's a couple others that I was looking at.
Because we've gone from like, all right, I'm gonna trade here to get a direct token incentive. Then it was I'm gonna trade here to get points. Now it's just like I'll trade here because maybe I'm getting points in the background. It just keeps moving further away, which is actually like economically efficient for the protocol itself.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's great for them.
Yeah. But they've definitely reached like enough volume where I don't think the main reason people are trading there are for incentives.
No.
At all. It's just because it's like the best place to trade.
And like, if you look at like the performance of things outside of, those three buckets that I talked about before, like just like it's very clear that like the two big winners are like from like, I guess you could like majors, is probably Sui and Hype in terms of most recent price action over the last like month or so. Like those are the very clear outliers in terms of relative strength to the rest of the market, up like 50% each in the last month or so. So I don't know, like that's pretty much all I look at to be like, all right, like when we get pullbacks, like what things do I want to buy? It's going to be those types of things.
Things that barely pull back.
Yeah, they might not pull back much, but
no discount.
So that's kind of like where I'm at with those things. I'm curious. Like I know Ceteris has his TIA thesis. Anything else you're looking at, Ceteris? I'm curious.
I got one for later.
I mean, I'm like mostly. I consolidate a lot. I said this before into like Sol and just Sol stuff during like the past few months when the market was shit. I don't want to stray too far from being pretty heavy Sol. Even TIA, it's like, I have a TIA. It's like material. But if it goes to zero, take the L and like move on sort of deal. I think it's like, I think so. It's hard. We're talking about the Solana tokens before, right? It's like, it's like Metaplex is such a good fundamental protocol, and it's something that's going to stick around on Solana, and especially if SVM gets more adopted too on all these changes. They're buying back and burning like 1.5% of their supply every month. But like it doesn't have any good exchange listings, and it was kind of like hedge fund hotel, like all these hedge funds bought it in like November or something. And then when the market turns, it's like, are people going to buy this fundamental token Metaplex, or are they going to buy Fartcoin or like the AI framework?
That's just the long-term ones that are.
And so this is the I don't know. This is the tough thing. It's like I don't know why Metaplex trades like so cheap and like doesn't have major listings. It's like one of the only few actual fundamental tokens in the entire industry that has like a moat, like a pretty good moat. Like it makes money off of every token minted on Solana. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, Sui is such a funny token to me. Just like Sui is like very like I was bullish on Sui like over a year ago.
Yeah, you
But
actually got that one pretty good.
but like at the same time, I've been in disbelief a lot during the entire like year and a half. It just goes on these crazy rallies, and I think it's a hard one for people to reason about because it's like the tech and the team objectively very strong. Like it is legit. It's not like vaporware. It is legit. Um, they still don't really have an eco though. There's not like a ton of stuff still. Um, and then reasoning about the FDV is hard. Like if you just look at it straight up on CoinGecko, it's like 34 bill. But then there's like 53% of tokens don't unlock to 2030. And then those are like unallocated. I think they're just like foundation or like Mist and Labs tokens. And then it's like, okay, are those like how real are those? Those are being used for staking. But then it's like realistically, how long is they're never going to spend like 53% of the FDV. And so it's kind of hard to like think about what is the actual like coming up with these like adjusted valuations for different protocols, right? Like something with an FDV
What's
that
the
fully
FTV?
34.
Yeah, that seems expensive. I think they do a lot of KOL right now.
And
PB.
yeah, and then there's like all these other rumors about like they're doing all this, and like I think the KOL stuff's probably true. I've heard it from like a lot of people, and so there's just like a lot of moving parts to it, with like, and it's just very hard to
Hashtag Grant.
yeah hashtag Grant. It's just like very hard to I don't know reason about that one, and like kind of predict where it's going to go from here, right? When it is at even if you take the FDV and you cut it in half and say it's like 17, that's still pretty high for something that doesn't have um that is still working on building out an ecosystem and everything, right? So yeah. Um
And if you look, those rallies have been pretty spot driven. If you kind of check out CVDs, um, someone's been buying in size.
High
yeah.
stakes capital.
I think one of the reasons is that
Yeah.
I think that Sui's very like Asia focused too. And so I have like a bit of a blind spot, I guess, to like market participants. I think like Asia versus like North America or like Europe based crypto investors are very different types of people. I think they're like very different markets. And so just like way different market dynamics. But yeah, I don't know. What else am I looking at? I mean, those are kind of the
I
main.
have one.
Yeah, go for it.
So Galaxy Digital, they just announced today they're uplisting on the 16th of May. Finally, I've held this thing for fucking 5 years, and
Well,
finally,
isn't the vote in like a week or something?
yeah, the vote's on the 9th, but they just put out a tweet today they intend to uplist on the 16th. So that's like going from the TSX. We're on Gate.io right now, and we're getting Nasdaq. So we're going to Binance, we're going to Coinbase, we're going to Upbit. We're getting the works here. So I'm excited. I'm excited for that. And they basically have like a trading business, a staking business, a lending business, like trading / market making, staking, lending, an M&A business. Though all those businesses, those operating businesses are kind of like break even, but they're starting to like really scale up now. Then they have like a venture portfolio, crypto and cash on the balance sheet of about like 2 billion US. And then they have this data center they bought this old Bitcoin miner in 2023 that they're converting into a data center, which is like potentially one of the biggest data centers in the US. And they've signed I think like over $10 billion worth of contracts with CoreWeave to like build out this like massive data center in Texas. So it's like a good crypto plus AI play. And they're finally getting their uplisting if you can buy it on.
Yeah, I own
Yes.
some Galaxy. I think it's like a decent.
So the
crypto
Canadians
equity.
finally get to dump on the Americans with this uplisting.
Anyway, so
Yeah,
I'm excited about it. I think the data center piece is like pretty huge.
that's like the moonshot if that kind of like works out.
And so far it is. Like they've signed I think
They had to deal with
600.
CoreWeave recently, right?
Yeah, they've signed like 600 megawatts of the 800 they have approved with CoreWeave. And if like the deal's relatively the same, I think it's like 13.5 billion of revenue over 15 years. So these are like long contracts, like predictable revenue. They're building out this massive data center. They have another 1.7 gigawatts of capacity under study, which is like if they were to get to the full 2.5 gigawatts, it makes it like one of the biggest data centers in the US or the biggest. So it's kind of cool. Crypto and AI. It's a
Yeah.
good narrative.
Yeah. Cool. I think we're actually going to end it now because Jason and I have something we need to be at. But yeah, good pod, everyone. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back in a couple weeks. And Jose will probably be back then. And yeah, I don't know. Hopefully there's some more. I feel like we've still been in this kind of like weird limbo zone for a few months. Hopefully you get like more concrete direction or something. But yeah, thanks everyone, and have a good rest of your week.
Thanks everyone.
See you guys.